Mare Cromwell, pleasure having you here as a guest on Nature Reality Radio. So it was the Higher Self YouTube channel where I heard about you. You are a Gaia mystic and a gifted elder, and well, there's all sorts of quotes around here that express you in a loving, joyful way as a dolphin ambassador and whatever, whatever else you may, or is that someone else who's a dolphin ambassador that that I was commenting about you? Well, we'll get into that dolphin stuff later on, but I guess starting off, it only makes sense. Like with many of the guests that I've been having on my show, this is a very rare that I don't do this now, it seems, but I might as well ask you, starting off, tell us what you experienced from a primary source standpoint. Give us your life story. How did you realize you had the great spiritual metaphysical powers that you do, to do the things that you do, and have the retreats that you have, and teach the things that you teach, and everything else that goes with it? You got the floor. Tell us your spiritual life story. Please keep it fun and educational for everybody.
Well, first of all, I just want to clarify that my name is Mare, and I know it confuses people, so it's Mare Cromwell.
Mare
Um,
Cromwell.
yeah, and I'm so honored to be on your show, and that's a really great question to ask me. I, I'm humbled by the work that I do. I have spiritually surrendered to serve Earth Mother, Mother Gaia, and this path took a really deep turn into a far more complete surrender, I should say, in June of 2012 when I was invited to do a ceremony with a really gifted Algonquin man. And in that ceremony, and the ceremony had been requested by Earth Mother herself, and he had the capacity to communicate with her, had been working with her for years very closely, and she requested this ceremony for this, just the two of us to do it. And right before we started the ceremony, he said to me, I'm going to be bringing Earth Mother's energy and her consciousness into your energy body, but I don't know how you're going to disconnect afterwards. And he was concerned about how we would disconnect because in his mind, he felt that that was a rightful thing to do at the end of the ceremony. And I said to him when he shared that with me, I said, I'm really not concerned about the disconnecting part. I just know my life is to serve Mother. And so we did the ceremony, and right after that, Mother started talking to me very clearly, as most people hear a normal human voice around them. And another aspect of that story is that I was diagnosed with lymphoma just 4 days before the ceremony, and I was freaking out about my health and pretty terrified about this diagnosis. And Mother said to me right after that ceremony, she said, if you surrender to me to the extent I'll be asking you to surrender, I will help you heal from the lymphoma without the doctors. And so that's what's happened. That's been part of my journey.
Thank you, thank you. I'll be on mute whenever you're talking, just so you know. So, well, you are definitely a very popular person. I tried to friend you on Facebook, and a message popped up saying this person has reached the 5,000 friend limit. So there's definitely a lot of people that believe in your work, and that's all the more reason why you're worthy of being a guest on my show to expose the nature of reality for what it is and what it is not. And unlike in the past where I was a lot of conspiracy theories and such, nowadays it seems, well, I try to make it more love-based and whatnot, to try to go along with the fact that Mother Earth is moving in a positive timeline in many ways, and the control system of domination control, even though it has a presence still, it is for all intents and purposes cannibalizing itself and has to keep cannibalizing itself and to survive itself since 2011. That's not me talking, that's Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz is talking. So you have to think that Gaia, Mother Earth, will eventually ascend at some point. I dare use that dreaded A word, ascend. A lot of people say there's an ascension deception of sorts. Maybe we'll get into that later. But just for the hell of it, I can't resist asking. You seem to love the word Gaia. I could have sworn I've heard a few people, including the very controversial but yet seemingly very loving Lily Earthling, once say that Gaia, that's a brainwashing term of sorts because it actually has malevolent reptilian origins, the word Gaia, and they impose that word upon us to make us think it's a love-based word when in reality it feeds the domination control system because bad guys created it. Do you think that's a ridiculous way of looking at it, or is there some truth to that?
That is an interesting question. And somebody else sent me an email after coming to one of my workshops related to what you're sharing, how Gaia is more has more negative connotations. I had never heard that. I can tell you that Mother Gaia loves being called Gaia. I mean, you can call her Earth Mother, you can call her Pachamama. She goes by many names around the world, and uh, I don't really know how to respond to that question because what she is about is so contrary to any of the fear, any of the control, any of the certain patterns on the planet from certain reptilian beings that have certainly not had her highest good in their interests and their actions on the planet. But this is news to me. I mean, when that other person emailed me that, I thought, I don't even know how to respond to that because in my relations with her, all I get is positive love vibrations with using I call her Mother Gaia. And she's fine with that. She doesn't say, "Oh, don't call me that. That has reptilian roots or kind of or influences." There's none of that that comes from her that I have ever experienced. And I know a number of other people who can communicate with her and see her and work with her closely, and none of us have ever gotten that feedback. So I don't. That's my response.
Oh, thank you very much. You have some events upcoming in the near future. I might as well give you the chance to pitch them right now. There's this 1,000 Goddesses Gathering and Global Grid, October 20th, 2018 in Washington. I don't think I am. That's a Saturday. I don't believe I'm going to any conferences anywhere. Even though it's a goddesses gathering, I presume that men that have a very strong divine feminine character with them, like yours truly, could potentially come to this. And if that's the case, it's something I'd like to look into. Why don't you tell us what that's all about, and also maybe some of your other upcoming events? Including this one in November. I saw that's in Maryland. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make that one. But maybe this one in October will be different. Some of the things that you're doing in the future and what you seek to do with them, and some of the metaphysical activities that you'll be doing that intend to spread love and suppress fear.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'd love to share about some of these activities because these are activities that Mother wants me to do. So it's important that they get out there. The Thousand Goddesses Gathering is a big event, and this will be the second time we're going to do it. And this is based on a Tibetan prophecy that when 1,000 goddesses or Tibetan Taras, Buddhist Taras unite, that the tone of the planet will shift from fear to compassion, and the divine feminine will come back in. And we did the first event in October of 2016, and we did it then because, quite honestly, Mother woke me up at 5 in the morning, late July of 2016, and said, this goddesses gathering, which I was already in the early stages of planning to be at a retreat center the following year, somewhere out in some more rural location. She said this needs to happen in Washington, D.C. before the elections. And when she wakes me up at 5 in the morning and gives me instructions like this, it's pretty much, okay, Mother, I'm on it. But I also, when she gives me these kinds of instructions, and they're not small projects, which this is not at all, my first response to her is generally, and you're going to help, right? Because this is big. And she always assures me, yes, I'm going to help. Yes, of course. So the 1,000 Goddesses Gathering is definitely, we are inviting men. We're inviting those who embody the divine masculine to please join us. We're actually asking men who really want to be there in an active role to contact us and be part of our divine masculine team, because there's going to be a specific set of roles during that day during the ceremony for men. But the focus of the day is to call on the goddess in all of her names. And we don't even need 1,000 goddesses to show up. We're going to be calling on more than 1,000 goddesses on the spirit plane. And that's what we did in 2016. And when we did this in Washington, D.C. in 2016, it was really interesting because some really wild things happened. And I know this is something that you and your listeners are particularly interested in. I want to share that before we did the event, a month before we did the event, I went down to the mall with a good friend to check out the site where we were set to be for our event, where we had the permit from the Park Service. And there was a really ancient grove of cherry trees in this particular quadrant near the base of the Washington Monument. And when my friend and I walked into this grove of trees, we both heard the trees welcome us. And then we both heard, we have been waiting for this for a long, long time. And I can communicate with trees occasionally. It's not always really clear communication, but that particular day it was very clear. And we were both stunned, my friend and I, and realized in hearing that message that the realms of consciousness, the realms of spiritual beings on the planet, and especially in the DC area, but I know it wasn't just in DC, we're very aware of what we were doing and what we were organizing and what the purpose of it was. And so having that message just a month in advance from the trees gave me a heads up, like, wow, okay, the spirit team behind this gathering is not small. And so on the day of the event, people were seeing like beams of purple light. It just was so powerful. But one of the main things that happened, which floored me, and some very gifted light workers confirmed that they saw this. A massive conduit of white light came into our gathering because we did high ceremony. A very gifted ocean high priestess named Yeye Amileye, who's based in Asheville, led the ceremony. And when she got to this one part of the ceremony at one of the altars, and her husband was with her supporting her, and he's a very gifted high priest in the Yoruba tradition. Chief Olu is his name. When the ceremony got that particular altar, the water altar, it's kind of a long story, and I can go into more details in a moment if you want, after maybe giving you a chance to ask a question too. But long story short, a massive conduit of white light came in to the ceremony right at that altar and radiated the ground to the level of 12,000 Hawkins scale of frequency. And if people don't know what the Hawkins scale of frequency is, it's a measurement, it's a metric for spiritual energy that David Hawkins created. And the Christ was determined to be at 1,000 Hawkins scale frequency. So people who are more spiritually evolved, who are really focusing on their work, raising their vibration, have a higher Hawkins scale frequency within their energy body. Well, what came into the mall was not just 1,000, which would have been the Christ level of energy. It was 12,000. And so all of us who were there got a major chakra activation. People were remarking about the gathering for days, absolute days, and how powerful it was. But another piece about this energy that came in, not only did it radiate right there into the ground there at that altar, and then, radiated in, around the surrounding area where we were, but it radiated out as energy will move. It radiated out about 3 miles in diameter from where we were, which includes an area of the White House, the Capitol building, all the government buildings that surround the Washington Mall, and even included the Pentagon building within that 3-mile radius. And the Potomac River got an activation. And it rose the energy levels, Hawkins scale frequency, from just below 1, which is how energy was in those buildings and that whole surrounding area prior to our ceremony. It rose those energy levels in all those buildings to close to 800. And so it basically did a big spiritual clearing of the center of DC, which was kind of mind-boggling.
Well, I'm happy to report that I actually did register for that event just now. I see that it's free, so it's kind of those nothing to lose, everything to gain kind of things. And I believe Megabus is actually doing a special discount to transport people around up until in that time period, up until like the new year or something. So might as well take advantage of it, and hopefully nothing else will be going on October 20th that'll enable me to be able to go to that and join you there. So kind of at a crush for money at the moment. Can't really afford to donate too much. I'll try to find a way to donate something for you, but I kind of forgot a few bills to pay before I do that. It's going to be a hard money month for me, so says my numerology horoscope. But I'm not going to let that stop me from.
If I can respond to that, Andrew, I totally understand budgets. And for all those who are listening, uh, yes, the event is listed as free. We can't officially charge for it because it's on the Washington Mall and we can't cordon it off. And there are some significant expenses to this gathering. So when people want to join us, we do ask, please consider donating anything, $5, $10. And I totally get that if your budget's tight, that may not be within your means. But even just the price of a cup of coffee, all of it helps because we're actually flying some elders in to lead parts of the ceremony during the day. So, so I'm really glad you registered. I love that you're coming. That's fabulous.
Yes, yes. Also, love to come to the Great Mother Love Retreat, but I'm going to be in the Laughlin, Nevada area for a conference, a Star Wars conference that Paola Harris is has scheduled at that time. So I'm not going to be able to join you for that. If that conference somehow magically gets canceled for whatever reason, I'll definitely have your Great Mother Love Retreat conference at heart and possibly consider it. So I guess is there something that you're planning special at that Great Mother Love Retreat that's what says immersing yourself in the divine feminine? Well, why don't we get into that? You can tell us about this retreat and all, but I really want to get into what the divine feminine is, and for that matter, can you compare and contrast the divine feminine and the divine masculine?
Well, the divine feminine, in its purest sense, is the purest innocence. It's also very, very high levels of living in a place of from a place of compassion. It's embodying the deepest, sense of a mother's love that is the purest love of the mother. And when we think of divine feminine deities, there we have Virgin Mary, we have Kuan Yin, there's so many divine feminine deities from traditions all over the world. But when somebody, and it can be a man also, because men also have their feminine aspects, just as women have their masculine aspects. When someone has really stepped into their divine feminine self and is embodying that, there is a quality of, it's always really hard for me to define this as much as I use the term all the time. This is a challenging question for me. It's really like embodying the sense of the purest love, the purest innocence, and deep feminine wisdom. And within the realms of feminine wisdom, we have wisdom that is related to the circle, the power of circles as opposed to hierarchical ways of being, which is more masculine. It's the ways of deeply intuitive natures where we are guided by tuning in and listening to those realms that are from the spirit realms, honestly. Uh, and to compare it to the masculine, to the divine masculine, in my sense, the purest aspect of the divine masculine is that of the protector, that of the masculine energetic that holds space and secures the well-being of the women and children, to make it sort of in a simplistic way like that. It's also the hero. It's the provider, but from a sense of a gentle, compassionate approach also. And this is where, to me, compassion can overlap between the masculine and feminine when we're talking about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And honestly, Andrew, I would love to turn the question around and ask you, because I'm always learning from other people how they characterize divine feminine and divine masculine.
Well, you're asking someone who has been told some things, some very prominent things about the subject by different people, about how I personally have manifested it myself. I've had people tell me that I have found my divine feminine in a couple of different locations. One in particular was over Independence Day weekend in 2015 when I went to a retreat with a hodgepodge of different women of a spiritual nature, different ages, different and such, and from different parts of the country. And Elizabeth Diamond Mulligan, who seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. If you're listening, Elizabeth, by all means, can you please raise your hand and tell us where you are? But anyway, she, one of her, the people that was at that retreat that I went to in Atlanta, in the Atlanta suburbs, was like a nature lover's paradise with all sorts of metaphysical things. And I was told that the fact that I was invited to that vortex center means that I had found my divine feminine as a man. And I was thinking, well, what exactly does that mean? And well, that led me on another journey of sorts, where in October of 2016, I was at Andromeda Council contactee Tolek's uh, event in it was in Arizona, one of his conference gatherings, and I had been told that I had found my divine feminine by one of the prominent members of who was helping Tolek at the time, and she told me, I know you have. I'm speaking from my heart. There's no reason you can doubt me on this. And well, interesting story how between that time I discovered how much my mother truly meant to me. Because you said the divine feminine really means a lot for has to do with like the divine mother and all. And well, I realized how close I was to my mother in between those two events, like how much I was a very prominent sun gazer, and my mother, being an ophthalmologist, would constantly bitch at me about that and assert that I was hurting myself, and I couldn't stand it, and I was pretty obnoxious in my tone, telling her to shut up and all that, and told her I was annoying because I couldn't think of any other way to make her stop. And she eventually got the idea that I didn't love her anymore, and she straight up told me that. And she told me that she had lost weight and had not been eating and was wasting away, she said, because of what I was doing. And she had always told me when I was a young kid, Andrew, you're making yourself miserable. But she seemed to do a complete 360 on that, and or 180, I should say, and was blaming me for making her miserable at this. And I was like, what am I going to do? My mother's suffering, and I can't give up sun gazing because I believe it's doing me well. And I found myself meditating and trying to do all sorts of healings on my mother, even though I never had experience as a healer before, like meditations at 1 in the morning outside the bedroom window, and to heal my mother for all the damage that she had inflicted upon herself, worrying about me, and telling the Creator that I'm willing to sacrifice my own health for her health if that would help her and everything. And I noticed after I was doing that, she actually got a little better and was actually improving. And I was thinking maybe I do have that in me to heal someone like this. Seeing what I'm doing to my mother who had been suffering because of my actions. And when I told her that because she had noticed I was actually gaining a lot, so like she was losing weight from depression, I was gaining weight from depression, seeing how much she was suffering. And she told me, wow, you've gained some weight. And I told her, yeah, you know why? It's the same reason that you had been losing weight, because I'd been going through a period of depression, seeing what had happened to you. And I flat out told her that she means more to me than anyone or anything in the world. And she gave me the longest hug after that. And I thought, well, maybe this is some very significant point in my life. And looking at the time periods when I had been told by people, like the gathering on Independence Day in 2015 with all those women at the like the Vortex Center, the Atlanta suburbs, and Tulloch's conference, where I had been told by one of the people there that I had found my divine feminine. I'm thinking, okay, these are the markers that show like that you're on the right track, Andrew. The universe will tell you that you're on the right track to the divine feminine. It's all about like the mother, and you're getting your mother involved to see it, and you're getting other women involved to see it, and well, that's just one little story that it enables me to find out how I found it personally. But does that really help answer your? Was that really the question you were asking me specifically about what I feel the divine feminine is, or?
Well, I was putting the question to you that you gave to me, like, well, what is the divine feminine? And it's really hard to define when we try to get to the purest essence of what it is. But it sounds like for you, you went through a bit of a spiritual awakening where your heart opened up to a different level of embracing the mother. Um, and in the case of your experience, it sounds like it was you really realizing how much you loved your mother. And our mothers represent the divine feminine when, in their healthiest, purest sense. I mean, I grew up with a mother that had a lot of issues, and I love her deeply. But when I think about part of my path and feeling this really strong draw to the divine feminine, I know that in many respects I was searching for a mother that was deeply compassionate and gentle and able to be there for me regardless of what was going on for me. And I think that's true for a lot of people who early on in their years of on their spiritual path seeking the mother. We come from, a lot of us, from a wounded mother relationship. But yes, the divine feminine is the divine mother, and she comes by many names, and she is the ultimate creator too. Now, I'm not going to go to the place that some do because it's not my cosmology. I don't believe that a powerful divine feminine force created the universe. I believe it was, a oneness force that has the divine masculine, divine balance, divine feminine balance within it that has created the universe. And I don't fully understand all that. I mean, there are lots of different ways people will describe that and look at it and theorize. But the divine feminine is, if we were to close our eyes and allow ourselves to experience the energy of being held in the most loving, gentle way, and protected too in that loving, gentle way. That would be the divine masculine aspect of it. But that's, to me, an experiential way of thinking about and taking in the divine feminine love.
Well, yes, and even though on a feminine energy dominant planet like Earth, the divine masculine wouldn't be as much as prominent as the divine feminine in so many areas, one simply cannot chuck it out and disregard it, because if you become too dominant on one side, you're well gonna lose touch with your core infinite soul essence. And one area of this that's related to the divine masculine of sorts is the New Age movement, and how it was allegedly created in order to suppress the divine masculine for all those people that woke up to the fact that religions are fraudulent, and that you can't realize your infinite self by following a religion which tells you to worship some sort of a higher power other than yourself. Uh, well, New Age movement, metaphysically accurate and all, in the end, they still suppress the divine masculine because, well, among other things, it's sort of a hear no evil, see no evil, feel no evil, that kind of thing. Don't acknowledge that which you have to acknowledge in order to fully understand reality, and also suppress that which does, like it or not, affect your interfere with your free will. So that raises the question: do you know of anything like what would be the equivalent of the New Age movement for the divine feminine? Is there like a religion that was created of sorts, so to speak, that is designed to suppress the divine feminine that maybe people should be aware of that is maybe like the New Age but different from the New Age? Is there anything you can think of like that that people need to be aware of?
I don't know anything that would be like that. That's that's no, I don't know anything like that.
All right, fair enough. Um, so when it comes to accessing the divine feminine, what are some general things that people can do uh, to um, to do it? I mean, is it all a matter of just spending more time with nature and whatnot? Because that's all about that's Mother Earth, that's nature, that's what people think of stereotypically when they think of a loving mother, or is it a lot more complicated than that? There's so many more other things you need to do in order to access your divine feminine besides just meditating out in nature and touching the earth and such, grounding and whatnot. Any advice for those that don't know where to start with this or think they know where they're going but maybe aren't going on the right track?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to make the distinction between uh, and maybe distinction is not the right word, but I'm going to just use that word in the moment, is that we live on a planet that has a feminine planetary caretaker. And so, yes, when we go outside and we're in natural areas and we get out of our busy monkey mind when we're out there, because it's challenging for a lot of us to actually shed the, our busy thinking mind when we're outside. But if you can spend time outside around the trees, around the stones, around the flowers, around the rivers, and start to quiet yourself and seek to tune into the powerful energies around you in those natural areas. Mother Gaia is one of those energies. She is our planetary being. And I want to also add that she is not the planet itself. She is a very powerful ancient spiritual being who was assigned the role or slash volunteered to take on the role of being our planetary caretaker. She came from off planet. It's a long story, and I'll get into that in a second, who she is and parts about that. But so that's one aspect of embracing the feminine, is embracing Mother, our planetary caretaker, and by opening our hearts when we're outside to the love that surrounds us, because the trees and the flowers and the butterflies, all of the living beings, including the stones, emanate a high frequency of love that most people don't even experience, because their hearts have shut down and they've never woken up to the energies that are outside in these natural areas. But if you can communicate with a tree or communicate with an owl or communicate even with a stone, and there are gifted people who communicate with all those beings, including dolphins and whales, etc., they will speak to the amount of love that all these beings have for us. And these beings are waiting for us to wake up and shift out of our lower dimensional energetic fields that are based on separation and control and lack and fear and all that. So that's one way to experience the feminine, the divine feminine. But I think it's also really important to, if you are on this journey, if you seek to be on this journey to embrace the divine feminine, is to start to open up to the reality that the feminine is within you. Even if you're a man, the feminine is within you also. And you have the capacity, I have the capacity, we all have the capacity to heal our wounded aspects of ourselves, our wounded feminine, to shift into our divine feminine self, to heal our wounded masculine too, to shift into our divine masculine self. And it's a journey. and it's going deep into our shadow self. It's going deep into all of our trigger points and all the ways that our cultural conditioning have encouraged us to quote unquote worship the masculine ways, whether we're aware of it or not, and deny ourselves and those around us from embracing and living from the softer, and I'll say softer, I think that's a good term to use, more divine feminine ways. And I want to also add that, I mean, I've been on this journey for a while, and I'm in nowhere near the end of it. I'll always be in process. I'll always be growing. I'll always be healing. I'll always have trigger points that come up in me that are either parts of my wounded masculine or the wounded feminine self. Um, and it's just a journey of healing and learning to love myself more and more deeply. I am a woman, and I have been called on the spirit plane to take on the role of helping to activate the planet in a larger way. I can't believe I said that. But that's part of what the Thousand Goddesses Gathering is about. Is the call for the Thousand Goddesses Gathering is not just to have an event on the Washin Mall, but to have a global grid of sacred circles and ceremony linking with us on the mall around the world. And as I heard it on the spirit plane, we're being asked by those on the higher planes that are not in the physical and the spirit plane, I mean, they want us to activate the planetary divine feminine grid, because it's time for that balancing of energies to come back and the healing of the imbalanced energies between the masculine and the feminine. Uh, so so those are a couple ways that I would recommend, but I'd also recommend that if you want to really embrace the divine feminine and start to experience her, and I'm going to say her as a collective, her, the goddess, I recommend that people work with an altar and get an image of the Virgin Mary. It could be a little statue or a little statue of Kuan Yin, or there's so many different goddesses that you can call on. And these spiritual beings exist in the spirit realms. And when you call on them with your heart, with your love, they come in. I mean, I do a lot of ceremony, and I've had people join me in ceremony, and they'll say, these are people who can see spirit. They'll say, well, four blue Taras just came in, and they want to know why you invoke them. And so these are powerful beings that do exist. And when you call on them and ask for their love and ask for their support, they will help you grow into your divine feminine self. They will help you heal your wounded aspects of yourself to help you be more whole, and again, to heal the wounded feminine and wounded masculine within ourselves.
Right, right. And not all worlds are divine feminine based. Like Mars, for example, that's a masculine energy dominant planet. George Kavassilis, I have no reason to believe he's making this up. He speaks from his heart and all. Says he's been to Mars and had a feeling of what it was like. And he said when I was there, one of the first thing I noticed was that the male energy was pretty strong there, to the point where it did not really, it had like had maybe some bad vibes with a divine feminine feeling that he's so accustomed to here on Earth. Now that would lead one to wonder, is like divine feminine incompatible on a planet like Mars, or is that a bad way of looking at it? Is it not a question of is it incompatible? The more appropriate question is, what would someone who found his divine feminine have to do in order to not feel bad vibes on a masculine energy dominant planet such as Mars? Any advice, or is this too far out for you?
Well, first of all, I certainly believe that Mars has a masculine planetary caretaker, and it's my understanding that all planets have planetary caretakers that are spiritual beings that have been assigned again or volunteered the role of being the planetary caretaker for that particular celestial body. And that goes throughout the whole omnicosmos. I love your question, because I think the first thing I would say is, well, if you get to Mars, and I'm, I actually just heard recently that there's a military base there. Well, I don't know if you call it military, but there's a space station there. I don't know how your contact George got there. I don't know if it was a spiritual journey or maybe he was able to teleport himself. I mean, there are lots of things that we can do as spiritual beings that can be highly sophisticated, that are beyond what most of us are doing, at least in our waking hours. Uh, my suggestion, and this is a great question, it's like, okay, let me think about this, is to just be open and to know that if everything you've ever experienced prior to being on Mars has been within the realms of a feminine planetary caretaker and the feminine energies on Earth, know that it's going to be a shock to your system. However, there are no rights and wrongs with any of this. It's just an is. Yes, Mars has a masculine energy. Yes, Earth has a more feminine energy. We who are alive here on Earth, and I'm sure your listeners all know this, we chose to be born here. Our souls chose to come here. I mean, there are many people walking the planet right now, or humans who are from other planets, and they know they're not from this planet originally. And some people they miss their old planet. Some are here because they know they're here to help with the new world coming in. There are all sorts of different scenarios with that, but it would be a shock to your system to go to another planet that has a masculine energy that's that strong. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, I'd like to talk now about the what's the deal with all the dolphins and whale motifs on your site? Well, there's definitely something to whales and dolphins being here on Earth. It's not just an animal that's here for the sake of an animal living on a planet. No, no, they have a much bigger purpose. I've interviewed people about this subject. Patricia Corey, for example, is one of the more prominent people that I know of that talk about the dolphins and whales' purpose porpoise on Earth, if you know what I mean, making a pun out of it. But anyhow, they are said, among other things, to be of an extraterrestrial nature, dolphins and whales, and people will hear that and say, "What does that mean? They are strictly alien, or do they have an alien soul that's incarnated in a mammalian body that resembles a fish but is actually a mammal?" Well, I'm babbling way too much here. I'd like you to enlighten us on what's the big deal with mystical creatures, dolphins and whales here on Earth, and what lessons are they here to teach us, and what do we need to know about them pertaining to our spiritual awakening?
Oh, it's interesting because the reason that you probably are mentioning the dolphins and whales from my website is because this winter I led a webcast series where I interviewed uh, a very, very gifted dolphin communicator named Linda Shea, who's actually half dolphin now. The dolphins have been doing an experiment with her, and she has the most beautiful, compassionate energy that's just at such a high vibration. I mean, she's a dolphin lightworker who's half human, half dolphin now. And then I interviewed Mary J. Gedden, who's a whale communicator. But beyond that, and then I interviewed other people, tree communicators and owl, et cetera, even nature spirits, Sasquatch communicators. It was a pretty fun webcast series, which, by the way, is available on my website to purchase, called Voices from Gaia. But the dolphins and the whales are, actually, as you're asking the question and I'm tuning into them, they're starting to come into my space and swim around me. They are from another source. They are here to serve the ascension energies on the planet, and I don't consider ascension a bad word. Some people may consider it overused, or what does it really mean? As I understand it, there have been numerous attempts for ascension to really come forward here on Earth, and it's been blocked by darker energies, a lot of alien interference, et cetera, et cetera. But the dolphins and the whales, they basically keep the vibration of the planet at a higher resonance with their songs and their work in the oceans. And they would never use the term work. That's not even in their vernacular and way of thinking. I mean, they play, they dance, they mate, they eat. Uh, but they come, their energetic is joy, especially dolphins. And so when people have the capacity to tune into them, their message is, you have forgotten who you are. You humans have gotten so bogged down in your lower dimensional ways of being and all your cultural conditioning. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And of course, we need to wake up with our actions that are continuing to spew the toxins, the chemical waste, all of that into our waterways, not to mention hard plastic waste. But, you know, they see us as kind of a lost, and I'm being very general here because they're very aware that there's some humans, a lot of humans who are waking up very fast, and they take a lot of hope with this, but they see the dominant patterns in our society that are shifting because things are happening in a beautiful way very fast that are it's kind of behind the scenery. And it sounds like you touch on that in some of your interviews, some of your other guests. But the dolphins are waiting for us to fully wake up. The whales are waiting for us to fully wake up. And I personally love to journey with them and shamanic journey, more with the whales and the dolphins, honestly. But I have a great love for them, and Mother Gaia loves them tremendously, and what their role is here on the earth. And they are very, very powerful beings. Their intelligence is huge, beyond human intelligence in many ways, however you want to measure intelligence. And the role they play in our ocean waters is very significant for the health of the planet's sort of energetic grids. Their role is very important.
Yes, and when it comes to dolphins and whales being extremely intelligent creatures, it has been found that they do refer to each other by name. Like if you study the sonar of a dolphin very, very closely, they found that you can deduce that they are, like, when they're calling another dolphin, they are using specific tones to refer, when they speak to a specific dolphin, which changes when they talk to another one through sonar, and that is in fact a sign that they do give each other names. Does that seem appropriate? And well, from a standpoint of consciousness, is there any significant behind like a creature giving itself a name? Like if a creature can give itself a name, it's of a higher consciousness, or is that like a bad way of determining how conscious or how close to ascension an entity is, like the ability to name oneself or name different ones of the same species?
I would consider that a really minor aspect of their consciousness, honestly. Um, oh boy, we're getting into like how do you define consciousness now? Which I don't really want to go there because I'm not sure I can do that. Uh, but they're so intelligent. Of course, they recognize each other as individuals. And sometimes, there have been documentation, with researchers or individuals out in boats where they've seen dolphins get into fights too. They can have their own emotional patterns. There can be a wounded emotional aspect of a dolphin, just as we've got wounded emotional aspects of humans. But all, in a more general way, the energy, if we were to talk about Hawkins scale of frequency again, it's my sense that they vibrate in an energetic way at a much higher frequency than the average human. They are very, very conscious. And one of the things that came out of the webcast series of interviews that I did this winter was these beings, including the trees, including the dolphins, including the whales, they already are in the fifth, sixth, seventh dimension. And I'm changing topic here a little bit, but not really, along the lines of consciousness and higher dimensional sort of energetic ways of being. The owl that was interviewed as part of the webcast series that I did, a very gifted animal communicator, was interviewing an owl. As I was interviewing her, she was interviewing the owl live. It was pretty interesting. And the owl was in a forest outside of Amsterdam. And the owl talked about the love frequency of the trees. When the owls are in the trees and perched in the branches, they're dancing within the energy waves of the trees. And there's a love relationship that is going on all the time between these beings. And they're very conscious of each other. it's hard for us to grapple with this because we tend to individualize ourselves and see ourselves as superior in our Western way of thinking to all these other beings, because most people can't understand their language and their energy frequencies. But the truth is that actually they're far more evolved than we are. And I know for a fact that the dolphins and the whales remember Atlantis. They remember Lemuria. They remember the times on the planet when humans and pre-human forms were far more conscious and living far more in a higher light frequency within our energy bodies. And they're calling us to come back to that. Now, that is my understanding. I love working with them. And when I do my healing sessions with clients, sometimes there will be whales that come in on the spirit plane to offer healing energy for the clients that I'm working with. They have so much love for us. And it's interesting because I don't know if you caught this story. Maybe some of the listeners watching or listening to the show caught this story, but earlier in the year, I believe it was in the winter, it might have been even last fall, there's a whale researcher who's done a lot of work to protect the whales and has been diving with them and photographing them and collecting documentation about their patterns, where they swim, their eating patterns, and all that behaviors. And she was swimming near a whale, and the whale came really close to her and actually terrified her, because the whale started nudging her up to the surface of the water, and then having the tail, or I'm not thinking of the right word, but anyway, it was essentially like working with this researcher in a way that was very off and scared the researcher. And it wasn't until the researcher got to the surface of the ocean and looked around, saw that there was a shark circling around the whale, and the whale was protecting this researcher. And when I tuned in on the spirit plane after reading that story and seeing the photograph of the researcher, and I think there was even there were photographs another colleague took of the whale moving the researcher, pushing her toward the surface of the water. The whale knew exactly what it was doing. The whale community knows who this researcher is wherever she goes around the planet. They were protecting her. They have a lot of love for her in particular because how much she is helping them. And so this one whale went out of its way, or her way or his way, to make sure that this researcher wasn't going to be harmed by the shark.
Yes, very intelligent creatures, very willing to to help out humans in all sorts of ways and have fun with us in many ways. I was on a dolphin watch at Chief Golden Light Eagle's 11/11 event in 2017, and we didn't see any whales, saw dolphins, but it was never seen so many dolphins in my life in one sitting, except for that Simpsons episode where they almost took over the world, but that doesn't count. The Dolphins were clearly showing signs that they wanted to like communicate with us, speak to us, and say things to us. And the gestures and all that they were showing showed yeah, they kind of know what's going on. They're not stupid. They want to help us humans ascend and and whatnot. All right, switching gears. Ascension. You say you don't you don't have a problem with using that word. Well, some people do, and they say that there's an ascension deception. George Kavaslis, among others, have asserted regarding the whole idea that we think we're going to um, enter a paradise environment of consciousness where we're burping butterflies and farting rainbows and all sorts of crazy stuff that that is just too far out there for the average third dimensional sheeple to understand. But for those of us that want to attain higher consciousness, it's the ultimate dream paradise. However, there has been a lot of pressure on this over the past well, one could debate when it's actually started, but it seems that there were a lot of talks from people. I don't think I need to go through all the names as I've done on previous shows in the past, but people that were all saying by X date and time, Earth will ascend into 5D and we will have crystalline bodies and, well, all sorts of other amazing things that come with being a 5D human. But no, that's kind of not what's going to happen. That's the most crazy way of looking at ascension, and it's not the way ascension works, as some people who talk about ascension mechanics, like Ashiana Dean and Lily Earthling, have talked about. So when you hear people say that there is an ascension deception, in the sense that people are pushing an idea of ascension that is too much of a utopian paradise and a reality that's too far out and too um, too joyous and too love based and too crystalline essence and such, and the idea that we can actually reach that and are going to reach that in the future, pushing that ideology has caused an ascension deception and is definitely a hindrance to the what should be an awakening of a different sort, whereby people realize that the world is an illusion and are trying to find solutions to it that don't involve like the idea of being able to have magical powers and such that a crystalline body being would. Um, any comments about this ascension deception and any harm that it may have potentially done? And I hope I haven't changed your perception of whether or not ascension is a bad word.
Oh my. Well, I'll respond like this. There are many reality bubbles prevalent on our planet right now within different circles of people. And those who have a really high sphere of influence will have the capacity to create an even larger reality bubble that other people will get engaged in. Uh, and some of these reality bubbles are not serving the highest good for divine plan alignment for Earth. And I'm going to be really point blank here. And I feel like this is Mother speaking through me right now, because she's kind of, well, I'll just keep on talking because she wants me to just speak her truth right now. The people who are dissing, which is a powerful word, but she wants me to use that word right now, the the potential of ascension, and using terms like ascension, what is it? Dissension? Attention?
Ascension deception. Yeah.
Deception. Ascension deception are actually energetically blocking the potential for ascension to happen more gracefully. Whatever the energetics are behind their way of thinking, and wherever those energies come from, are some darker energies that are thwarting the potential for ascension to happen more smoothly. And Mother wants me to be really point blank right now with your question to me. The ascension is happening. However, it's not going to happen on a specific timeline that's going to say by 12 p.m. on whatever year 2021 11 11. It's not going to be that cut and dry, because there's so many energies afoot on the planet and coming in from off planet that are trying to block ascension. There are energies that are way off in the omnicosmos that don't want to see Earth ascending, because once Earth really reaches full ascension, it's going to ripple out into the whole omnicosmos. And there are some powerful spiritual beings that are very committed to having ascension happen here on Earth, because they know this is how it's meant to be for the whole omnicosmos. It's supposed to ripple out through the whole universal space around us, of going out, I don't even know how many umpteen million, billion, trillion. You can't even measure it in miles, light years. So this term ascension deception is really got some dark undertones to it that Mother's not happy with. I'm being really honest with you. She's like shaking her head right now in front of me, going, wherever that came from, that reality bubble needs to be popped. And the people who are giving that a lot of credence and putting energy into it are being influenced by some darker energies from off planet, and Mother's not happy with that. So I'm answering your question in a pretty pointed way because this is what Mother wants me to say right now. And it's not it's not usual she comes through this strongly for me in an interview, but I'm being really point blank with you.
Well, when you got a host that like me who asks hard questions, you're gonna have Mother Earth being point blank with you, I guess, when she's trying to communicate with you to deliver an answer
Well,
like that, I guess.
yeah, and she wants me to say more because she's gonna roll here. This is interesting. We are meant to be living here on Earth. I don't know about the crystalline body piece. That's something that is not. I'm not fully aware of that way of metaphysically being within our energy body, but it makes sense to me that the higher we vibrate, the more we are shifting into the fourth and fifth dimension, and some people shifting beyond that. We're light fields, and if that's a crystalline base as a light field that is emanating more light, then I guess that's accurate. Again, I'm not an expert on all of these terms and all of these projections. Because my work is more speaking for Mother and doing Mother's work as far as bringing basic messages out to the world. But we're meant to be living in balance, which is far from where we are right now. We're meant to be living in a place of deep, deep, compassionate harmony with all around us. We're meant to be recognizing the roles of the nature spirits all around us, the elementals, the thunder beings, the fairies, the elves, the gnomes. They all exist here on the planet around us. A lot of them have taken off to be in far corners because they've lost their homes and they don't want to be around humans because the energy of the humans is so heavy for them, for a lot of them. But there are a lot of humans who are waking up and are being born also at this time with tremendous gifts, who are opening up these channels again with the nature spirit realms, with these other metaphysical realms here on earth, that are all waiting for us to remember who we are, that we are children of Mother, that we are beings of light. And yes, the earth has been going through millions of years, millions and millions of years of so much infiltration and impacts from darker beings from off planet. I mean, there are chambers in the rock layers of the planet where darker beings are being cleared right, left, and center still. There are attempts to keep ascension from happening by these darker beings. You can call them the gray ones, the reptilians. I mean, there are all these names, all these different groups. They come from different parts of the omnicosmos. They're being cleared off the planet. Ascension is happening, and we need to support it. Mother's like, we need to support it. We need to open our hearts and love our way back into how we're meant to be here on earth. And, you know, yeah. She's very opinionated about this, as she has every right to be, because she knows it's meant to happen. As a matter of fact, Earth Mother, or Mother Gaia, she has her own ascension crystal. And she calls it her ascension crystal. She's a firm believer in the ascension. But her crystal was actually taken away from her. It had to be found and brought back to her because of the dark energies that keep on trying to block ascension. So, for anybody who's listening to this, if someone says ascension deception to you, or ascension is not to be believed, or foo-foo, look them straight in the eye and say, you know what? I'm about love. And not fluffy, like fairy tale butterflies popping out of your mouth the way you were wording it. I love the way you worded that. We have forgotten how to be in a compassionate space and weave a web of love and compassion within our way of being here on earth. And there are indigenous peoples who have not forgotten how to live like that. And frankly, they have a lot to teach us, including the Kogi from Colombia. If I don't know if you know about the Kogi, but they're actually touring the United States. They go to Europe also, some of them, to help us wake up. They're like, we are your elder brothers and we see what you're doing. And we're very concerned about Mother. And they call Earth Mother Aluna. That's their name for Earth Mother. So So the ascension's happening, and it's a beautiful thing. And I invite whoever's listening to this to please embrace it and know that we all have the potential to help birth it, because that's what Mother is asking me to do, is encourage people to realize we're all here to midwife it. We are all here to midwife it.
Oh yeah, we definitely are. But I just want to clarify when this whole thing about like ascension deception and when are people taking it in a bad way and looking at it the wrong way. I think a good way to describe this would be what Andrew Bartzis had to say about when the year 2017 started, when he was asked what does 2017 signify, he said it's the year hope dies. What does that mean? Well, ever since 2012, the Mayan calendar end date, a lot of people had thought, oh my God, the Andromedans are going to save us. Oh my God, we're going to morph into crystalline beings. Oh my God, everything is going to be transforming, and we don't have to. We can sit on our fat butts and do nothing because we're going to be saved by either the Ascension or the ETs, or well, no, and that didn't happen. And he made it clear that 2017 is the year when all the people who believe that, who thought that that was going to be the ascension that was going to happen, were going to have their hopes killed, and well, it wasn't going to happen. And I was somewhat very close to that whole field because I interviewed, among other people, a guy named Ray Kusalandich, who claimed to be in contact with ETs, who had told him that we're going to have some sort of a crystalline transformation going on in 2017, and I'm thinking when I'm hearing him say this, oh my God, not this again. We've been down this road before. We've had people talk about this, and it always ends in disappointment. I cannot believe you're talking about this. And well, Reku Solanic, ever since 2017 ended, he has not. He seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth, and he's not communicating with anybody on Facebook. And well, I flat out told him, you got a lot of explaining to do as to why your ET contacts did not speak about what's going to happen, and you can't expect to say something like that and not have someone who you said it to directly, like yours truly, on his radio show, to and not have them ask questions about it, especially someone like me who's desperate to understand the nature of reality and wants to know what these ETs are thinking when if they're for real, what they're actually telling people like him. And that is maybe what I'm to help clarify, like what ascension deception is. All the people who think we're going to be saved by aliens and a crystalline morphing. Well, no, that didn't happen in 2017, and it's not going to happen in the future. And well, not anytime in the near future. Like any sort of a transformation of that is going to have to take time. I mean, there is a biblical prophecy of sorts saying we'll remain in physicality for another 1,000 years. But when you're talking about the Bible, that's religion, and I don't really know if I want to get into that too much. But one thing I do want to get into about how us humans are supposed to show love and compassion for each other. One thing that's very prominent in the world nowadays that seems to conflict with 5D, fifth dimensional compassion, is the whole crisis regarding illegal immigration and open borders. And this is something that I guess I am going to have to relate to over this upcoming weekend, because I'm going to be going to Detroit for the Awaken Empowerment Expo that's going on in Detroit. Taking the train there, and Detroit is right on the Canadian-American border, which is said to be one of the safest borders in the world, in contrast to the border with America and Mexico, where our current president has been trying to glorify the idea of building a wall on the border. And boy, that's going to happen. I think that's he's going to look really stupid when he either gets reelected again in 2020 or doesn't get reelected, because among other things he said he built a wall that was never built, that never was. But but anyway, my point is the idea of humans having to look at themselves as very tribal and treat immigration as a privilege and not a right, because we, among other things, well, why does immigration have to be treated as a privilege and not a right? Well, there's two reasons why, according to people that I've spoken to about this issue. One, we have different currencies, we have money and different currencies, and we have different languages. If we didn't have money at all, or at the worst did have money but had a universal currency, or if we could communicate or we communicate through the same language, not have to speak different languages, then we could have open borders. There would be no talk of building a wall. And I mean, you can imagine how a lot of Mexicans are feeling about this. They're thinking, okay, so why don't you want to build a wall in the American-Canadian border? So is it because Mexicans are more deserve to be discriminated more against than Canadians? Well, nobody ever talks about that, but I'm talking about it because I think it's a serious issue, and it seems like the ultimate act of hypocrisy to say that you want to give your country sovereignty by securing the border, but yet you want to keep out your fellow humans in the process. So how do you look at this issue?
uh, well, what comes to mind is that if we were to ask for a divine feminine perspective on this, not that I would have the most complete sort of definition of the fullest divine feminine perspective, is, you know, take it from from Mother Gaia's perspective. We're all her children. We're all her children. We're supposed to be sharing the planet together in a way that is also in balance with all the other living beings on the planet. We have gotten so far away from that. And this whole issue of borders, I mean, these borders are illusions because we are all humans. And then you've got the animals that cross the border as part of their ecosystem. You know, the potential for massive ecosystem devastation with putting a big wall up there, very few people are talking about that. But that's the reality too with the wall going up. I don't see it going up personally, but from the divine feminine perspective, we need to completely rethink how we're sharing our resources, how people's fundamental human needs are being met, what are our population numbers on the planet, and maybe we really should be having a lower population on the planet at large also. And that's a pretty controversial thing to say, and I'm in no way recommending genocide. I'm just making a statement as to how off balance things are on the planet. But I want to get back to something, Andrew, that you were bringing up before, and bear with me because it's not related to border issues in the
No
wall
problem.
and
What is it?
grace. It has to do with a lot of people don't realize that if someone's communicating to you from the spirit realms, or if somebody who is an ET is communicating with you, does that mean you want to necessarily trust them? Um, we need to have far better filters in place with who is speaking to us from the spirit realms, including from the extraterrestrial realms. Do all of them have our highest good in their interests? No. And so one of the things I teach my clients, and this is really something that the New Age community, and I'm going to be kind of blatantly direct here, because Mother really wants me to put this out there also, is that we have to have filters in place. And if somebody's talking to you, you need to ask them on the spirit planes, are you serving? There are three questions. Are you of the light? Are you of creation? Are you of the Christ? And when I say Christ, I'm not talking about the religious, dogmatic stuff. I'm talking about Christ consciousness. And if whoever is communicating with you can't say yes emphatically to all three of those questions, then you need to tell them to leave, that you will have no interest in communicating with them. So if you're interviewing somebody on your show who says he's talking with the ETs, I would want to ask the question, have you filtered out what the intentions of these ETs are? Because if their intention is to promulgate more fear on our planet, then yeah, they're probably very definitely legitimate. They're really ETs, but they're not serving the highest good for divine plan alignment, for what the planet needs, for what Earth Mother needs. And so many people are being sucker played and communicating with all sorts of spiritual beings of very low light. And we have to get far better at filtering who we're talking to and then who we're giving those messages out to beyond ourselves. And the only reason I can do the work I'm doing is because I've had some very gifted, Native American elders confirm that I'm working very, very closely with Earth Mother. That's the only way I can do this, because I could be talking to Joe Schmo on the spirit planes who actually doesn't give a poop about the well-being of the planet and tell me, oh yeah, I'm Earth Mother. But if I didn't have this, validation from these other elders, I would not do this work. I couldn't do it. So I think this is really important to think about with people who are listening on the spirit realms and talking to whoever they're talking to. Are they filtering who they're speaking with? We have to have quality control here. And I'm not talking about an industrial plant quality control. It's more like we're so easily taken in. It's Mother's like shaking her head right now, going, "My poor humans." And this is where, if we had some of the old tribal ways of shamans who are really gifted, they would be filtering these messages for us far better. They wouldn't allow so much. That's where the deception is, frankly. Mother's saying to me right now, that's where the deception is. Is so many people think they're talking to Buddha, but they're not. They're not.
Well, yes, you obviously have to use discernment when you're getting information from sources that claim to be channeling some sort of like an ET council or a higher consciousness entity. And there, I can go through many different names here. I've even named a few names earlier, but the if you were to ask these people, well, how do you know that you're actually channeling the genuine love-based entity that you claim you're channeling, and not some malevolent entity masquerading as that entity? Do you have some sort of a filter? And well, you asked me that very question, and the answer they would give you is, well, I think my intuition and my own discernment would enable me to tell at any given moment whether or not the entity I'm communicating with is a fraud. Now, all these like ETs that have said like future predictions and such, like when things are going to happen and all that. That's now that's an area that well, many people would say don't even bother going there because time is an illusion. It's not worth talking about, and you're only going to hurt your credibility if you give dates out and things are wrong. But of course, when these entities look at time in a whole new way than we do, it's I know it's a whole can of worms when you try to compare and contrast predictions that they make and prophecies they make with ones that humans make. But that being said, I would like to talk for a moment here. Oh my God, you only wanted to go until about 7:30. If it's not too much trouble, maybe go to for another 10 minutes or so, 7:35, because we started 5 minutes past 6 o'clock. Some of the things that you offer here, I'd like to maybe get into what some of these things can do to help people out. By all means, make a sales pitch out of this. Some of the products you offer. There's the Great Mother Bible Messages from Earth. I love you God's phone number. I gave you God's phone number. Well, all these things that you, I'm sure you can, off the top of your head, say what these things are because you're familiar with your own website. Some of these things that you offer and how they can help people and what they would do for people if they utilize them. Why don't you take the opportunity to make a sales pitch out of this, your services and products?
Well, you're kind. Thank you. Yeah, I have 3 books out, and they're all multi-award winning books. And my first book came out eons ago. It feels like 3 centuries ago, in 2002. And that one is the book called If I Gave You God's Phone Number, Searching for Spirituality in America. And that book is based on the question, if I gave you God's phone number, what would you do with it? It came out of a place in my life where I was very depressed. And I came up with this goofy idea of calling God on the phone and asking people the question, what would they do if they could call God on the phone? And so it's a really interesting look at all these different ways that people experience the divine or don't. I mean, I actually interviewed agnostics, atheists, Christians, Jews, an Afghani Sufi, who, by the way, I was interviewing him right as we were bombing Kabul in 2001, right after 9/11. A very, very spiritual man, deeply connected to God. I could tell he had God's phone number if you want to, and whatever you use the term God, whatever term people use for that greater being. So that was my first book. And then as I was mentioning to be in the interview, that very gifted Algonquin medicine man and I did the ceremony, and Earth Mother was brought into my energy body. And she said to me right after that, not only did she say to me that she was going to help me heal from the lymphoma if I surrendered to her completely, she said, she wanted me to put aside another book I was working on, and she gave me the title of the book she wanted me to do and the first message. And that book is the Messages from Mother Earth Mother, and that was written in 5 weeks right after that ceremony. I mean, it just poured through me because I was just talking with Mother. She basically said, these are the messages. And actually, she gave me the whole table of contents in one night, and the title. And it was kind of wild because things were happening in the process of putting that book together, and that first few weeks of surrendering to Mother, where my car went an extra 110 miles on a full tank of gas, as pure magic. And I was like, Mother, are you doing this? And she goes, honey, this is so you know I'm taking care of you. I want you to trust me, trust me. Because I was burning through my savings at the time. And all sorts of really magical, mysterious things have happened in my life in this path of surrendering to Mother. I could go on, but we don't have time for that with this interview. So that was the second book, Messages from Mother Earth Mother. And then a year and a few months after that, I thought I was going to move out to Washington State and help set up a healing center with a really gifted medicine woman who is Cherokee, Okanogan/Cherokee, mixed tribes there. And Mother has a way of waking me up at 5 in the morning, or 4:45 or 5:15 when she really wants my attention. And in the process of planning that move, and feeling kind of lost, like, well, what's next in my life? I guess I'm supposed to move out west, and just not feeling highly energized about it, but thinking that was the right move. Sure enough, Mother wakes me up at 5 in the morning in the middle of November 2013 and said to me point blank, you're not going to move to Washington State. You're going to stay here in Maryland and to write the Great Mother Bible. And you know, there are times when she asks me to do things where my response to her is not, and you're going to help me do it. In that situation or that context, it was like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And she kept on telling me when I said, I'm not going to do that, I'm not writing a book with the word Bible in it. And she said, you are the one, all you need to do is listen. All you need to do is listen. And so the conversations with her for the book started January 2nd, 2014. And mind you, I was living in a house that I was paying rent to a friend that the bank had not fully foreclosed on. And I said to Mother, I said, I can't stay in this house. It's about to go to auction. And she said to me, you will be able to stay in the house as long as it takes to write the book. Trust me, trust me. And what happened was she was right, of course, because she had it all orchestrated on the spirit plane. But I stopped paying rent to my friend once all the paperwork got passed over to the bank completely and her name was not on the title anymore. I didn't pay rent to anybody from March until October. The bank, Freddie Mac, paid me $1,500 to move out at the end of October. And that's when the manuscript was done. So Mother took care of me in this limbo magical bubble of a house where I did ceremony every day that winter, sacred fire ceremony at my altar, just communicating with Mother and writing the book for her, writing her messages. And there was a lot of my story woven in the book because I'm just a human too. I was struggling a lot that winter with, you know, a new boyfriend and insecurities about this, that, and the other thing. And it's powerful conversations with Mother. So that's called the Great Mother Bible. And yeah, so a lot of people are very touched by these books. Some people have told me how much they're healed by reading the Mother books in particular. I just got an email from a reader this morning about how reading the Great Mother Bible has helped her learn how to love herself more, and she's so grateful she discovered me and my writing. And that's one of the things that's really missing in our society is strong self-love. The cultural conditioning from our Western society has so wounded us in our hearts that part of the call that Mother is putting out to every single one of us is learn to love yourselves far more. Be more gentle with yourselves, because that's how we're meant to be living here on this sacred planet. to remember how sacred we are, and all that is around us is sacred. But we have lost our way. But a lot of people are waking up. So there's beautiful things happening. So that's the story about my books. I also have a meditation available on the website called Mother's Love Cord Connection. That is a really beautiful, powerful way of connecting with Earth Mother's love in the heart of the planet and having her energy move through all of your chakras in your energy body, because she's also calling on us to ground ourselves. We're not grounded enough. We tend to live from our higher, our mind, and not so much our heart and our lower root chakras connected to her. And that was from a message she gave me in 2013 of calling us home. She said to me, all of my beloved two-leggeds all used to be spiritually connected to me with this love cord connection. She says, I miss you all. Come home to me. And part of it is rebuilding that connection, that spirit connection, energetic connection between us, our energy body, and her heart. Because the more of us who are connected with her and walking all day long and sleeping and eating and all that connected to her, the more we're going to be helping to bring forward the new world that's coming in, the ascension, the way we're meant to be living here on Earth. We've gotten so far astray from that. So that is there are other things available on my website. There's some Gaia Teach sessions you can purchase. And then there are actually some items on my website to purchase that are fundraisers for the 1,000 Goddesses Gathering. We sell these sacred silk veils that we hand dye using water from over 400 sacred sites from around the planet. Some people actually can see and feel the energy in these silk veils. It's really beautiful. And then we have these goddess pendants. But everybody can go to my website. So it's marecromwell.com, marecromwell.com. But Andrew, thank you for having me. Thank you for your really pointed questions. And it's not often Mother comes through that strongly and needs to say something very powerfully through me, but you brought it forward, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Glad to be of service. And to finish off, I did you actually manage to get your actual website out? I don't know if it's if you want to do that and plug yourself, any contact info, anything else that you like. By the way, in the last couple minutes here that I'll have you, and then we'll call it a show.
Yeah, well, again, my personal website is marecromwell.com. I am leading a retreat that's in Maryland. Called the Great Mother Love Retreat, where we're going to go deep into the love of the Mother and actually go on spiritual pilgrimage to some local sacred sites here in the region. The website for the 1,000 Goddesses Gathering, that is 1,000, the number 1000, goddesses.net. And this is one of my, again, later assignments from Mother in the past few years after writing the books with her. Please check out the website. If you can't make it, with us in DC, please come into Sacred Circle, even if it's just you. That can be a circle in itself, or with other people, and join us and register on the website. Via the website, there's a registration link to Eventbrite. Please donate if you can. But with the extent of what happened in 2016, this is really about activating the divine feminine planetary grid to bring the healing energies of the feminine back in, because we all need healing, and the divine feminine is powerful, powerful healing energy, and it's called for right now in a big way. And it's about the balance between the masculine and feminine. Ultimately, it's not about the feminine taking over. It's about ultimately coming into sacred balance. So thank you, Andrew.
And thank you very much for being a guest. This was very enlightening, and I will try to. Oh boy, to tell you the truth, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to upload this to YouTube until Monday, because I have to upload it to a format that's going to be compatible, and that's going to take a little bit of time tonight. And then tomorrow, I got some lawns to mow before I catch the train to Detroit, and I'm not going to be back home until about 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday. But when I get back, I will catch up on everything. And one thing I will try to do before the clock strikes midnight on Monday night is get our interview uploaded to YouTube, so the world would be able to listen to it. This was very enlightening, very love-based and whatnot, and I want people to hear this and make you a more popular and accepting person to a big audience that is deserving of listening to you. So please bear with me. I will get up when I can. And good.
And I appreciate whatever you're doing. Thank you. Thank you. You're a busy person. I just love that you reached out to me. So thank you for
Love having you on.
this.
Take care now. Bye bye.
All right, you too. Take care.